Welcome in to the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
It is Monday, December 26, 2022. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post videos. Patreon.com/the Gaming Discourse, where you can support us. Supporters will get their names in the credits, early access to videos, access to our Discord server, other fun stuff. So
and a high five.
Check that out. And if you exist in the same space physically as us, we'll give you a high five. I think we'll give people high fives for free. A different day today. Today, we're not going to do news. We're not going to talk about the games that we've been playing. We're just going to look back at 2022.
Hit the ad.
We're going to talk about our favorite games. We've got a couple categories here: soundtrack, favorite performances, and stuff like that. Connor will be hitting the timestamps. So if there's a specific game you want to hear us talk about, we're going to talk about Elden Ring. We're
There's going to be spoilers for most of these games.
Yeah, I mean, if we say something that's going to be spoilery, we'll get to it. We probably want to discuss the ending of Ragnarok. We'll discuss that at the end, but we'll have the timestamps at the bottom. Mm-hmm. We'll save our Ragnarok, Elden Ring, the big games of the year. We'll save that discussion for the end, and we'll go through some smaller games. So I think we can just hop right into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So our first category here, we call it hidden gems. Some things in this category may be less hidden than others. Honestly, it's just a poorly named category by me. And this is games that we liked that maybe didn't get.
Let's call them highlights.
That's a good one. Yeah. Highlights.
Let's call them highlights.
Well, highlights. There we go. We're changing the categories for the rest of the time.
Edit out that first part.
This category is called highlights.
How about highlights? Highlights.
So these are like I said, these are games that maybe didn't get as much press, whatever, maybe not be like necessarily quote unquote game of the year material, but are games that are good nonetheless that we want to talk about. We each have some, and I'll start. Hyperbolica by CodeParade. Hyperbolica, I reviewed it. Mm-hmm. Is a really fun, really interesting, non-Euclidean sort of puzzle adventure game. It's a lot of platforming. I don't really think there was any like hard mechanics. It was a lot of figure out where to go, figure out who to talk to do what kind of a thing. It's set in a funny metaverse, but yeah, it's non-Euclidean, which means there are no straight lines anywhere. So everything is curved space. So from the perspective of the player, it almost looks like when you move that you zoom in on everything. Like if you have a camera in front of you and you use the zoom function, that's kind of what it looks like. So instead of you moving towards things, it's almost as if
things are getting closer to you.
Your head is a camera and you're zooming in on things. It's not the first game to do this, but it does it extremely well.
A 360-degree camera?
Yes.
People hold up in the air to like do.
Kind of like that's a really good comparison. And it has a VR feature, and the VR is awesome. It's really cool, and they do some fun things. There's one of my favorite puzzles was you have to skate around a cafeteria, and you have to deliver plates of food. You're like a waiter. You have to deliver so many plates before the time runs out. And because of how everything looks, it kind of looks curved. So it's just this fun, you're going really fast and you're like zooming in between tables and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun to use in that space. It was a lot of fun to explore because hallways look like they end at a point, but as you get closer, there's something at the end of that hallway that you couldn't see because it was really small. So that was cool. Other gimmicks they do, there's a couple times where you have to launch yourself in a catapult. And you launch yourself high in the sky and you kind of watch the entire world become like a basketball size and curve and then expand back out as you land. And that's really trippy in VR. So I like experiences in VR that really push the boundaries of like what's comfortable, what works. You can play Hyperbolica without VR, but in VR it works really well. And I really ended up enjoying it a lot. And I think that's pretty much all I want to say. Richard, you wrote down Vampire Survivals.
I did.
Why don't you take that one?
Vampire Survivors ended up being something that, of course, attracted my attention due to aesthetics. Not necessarily the graphics, but of course, the very heavy inspirations that it takes from from Castlevania, and just monsters in general, skeletons, werewolves, etc. When you start the game, it's quite simple, and you kind of have this feeling of, why am I playing this? Only because you can't do anything but move around. There's no button to press attack. Your character attacks automatically. Sure. And the only thing you kind of do, especially at first, is to avoid enemies. But the more and more that enemies come into the screen, the more and more you level up as enemies drop level up substances. You gain more abilities, and these abilities, of course, have the chance to level up themselves as you level up. And once you do that, your either area of attack grows bigger, or even then at a certain point, if you get 2 different item types, because you've done that, it will unlock a new item type that you can select next time. And that changes the focus and the application of whatever you chose. And the game quickly becomes, within a couple of runs, something that is difficult to put down. Due to the probably the endorphins that it causes to, like, explode your brain with, and that satisfying feeling of you going from somebody who's very helpless to taking enemies out by not even touching them by droves. It kind of has that Dynasty Warriors feeling, except for on a very, very rough looking 2D plane. But I think that's part of its charm, is the roughness of how characters look, how enemies look. And of course, there's lots of surprises 20 minutes in, 30 minutes into your run, when eventually they just start throwing nothing but bosses at you, or they start throwing a Grim Reaper that's almost impossible to beat until you continuously keep at it. And that's not to say that, there's nothing else to do. Once you unlock certain abilities, or when you first hit your first 20 minutes, you unlock the second level, which then introduces, there's maps here. There's things to collect to you. Whereas, like, I can't unlock the next level until I find this item in this level. Gain a map that you can look at, and you can see where hidden objects are, and you have to try to make your way over there before the enemies get to you first, because chances are you may not be as powerful as you should be by the time you get there. And you can easily mess yourself up as easy as you can power yourself up. So there are runs just like Hades, where you will try your hardest to have a plan, and how you will attack this level or stage, and it doesn't work out for you. And then there's levels where, like today, I loaded it up just to get some game footage and ended up doing very well. And I was kind of worried that I was spending too much time recording. I was almost at like 10 minutes, and my character was doing very well for himself. And I wasn't even trying. Like, that wasn't the goal. It was just to get game footage. And it still felt amazing to play, even after the whole year that it's been out. And at $2.99, it's a steal of a game if you just want to jump in for a little bit and kind of feel very powerful.
Was Vampire Survivors PC only?
It was PC only up until the middle, or towards the end of the year this year, when it went to Game Pass.
Okay.
And right now it's PC and Xbox only. And then, of course, the surprise release on Android and iOS a week or 2 weeks ago. On Game Awards.
Yeah, because that's a game, I'm pretty sure that's a game that's verified for the Steam Deck.
It is still consistently in the top 5 of most played games on Steam Deck.
Yeah. And the Steam Deck, we'll talk about. I have the Steam Deck as one of the best games, even though it's not a game, but I feel like I need to talk about it. But we'll save that for later. Connor.
Yes.
Bear and Breakfast. You talked about it a little bit. Yeah.
Yes. So if you've watched these past year of episodes, talked about it a few times. You're a bear who runs a bed and breakfast. That's really it. No, but there's a little bit more to it. There's the actual running the bed and breakfast. Then there's because it is a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a but kind of like a city builder sim. You're developing the ecosystem of these rooms in your bed and breakfast, trying to optimize them to get the most value out of the people coming to stay at your bed and breakfast. There's also a hotel and a diner that you can open up, and like a resort that this bear runs. But it's a very calm game. It's one of the games where you boot it up, 12 hours pass, and then you sit down. You're like, what happened? But characters are hilarious. I'll talk more about that when we get to favorite performance, because Hank is adorable, as are his friends, which I can't remember their names right now, but just the menagerie of humans that come through, and the automated system that gives you your licenses for running these different buildings, which I'll talk about later. Unless
go for it now.
Okay, so Hank, being a bear, doesn't speak.
Human, sure, doesn't speak. Yeah.
So conversations with the humans that interact with you are very one-sided, because the people talk and then you make bear noises. That's kind of how the chips lie. But the one thing that you interact with a lot, which is the automated system that gives you quests to do, and lets you buy plots of land for running these different establishments, is an automated shark that talks to you. It's like a shark ATM /
Oh, wait, so it's a loan shark.
Yes,
okay.
Okay. Yes, it is a literal loan shark, but also kind of has like an MLM feel to it.
Funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a jab. I mean, it's a jab at that that whole system and loan sharks and whatnot. And the fact that they're predatory and issuing it out to a bear that would never be able to like actually do anything with it. So lighthearted comedy, and Hank, as you progress, you give him human clothes. You give him a little trucker hat, some jeans, a nice looking flannel, and it's adorable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who stays in the bed and breakfast? Humans?
Humans.
Oh, okay. They just can't talk to the proprietor.
Exactly. In fact, before you put on clothes, if you get too close to the humans as they're entering and exiting the bed and breakfast, they get scared because it's a bear. But you put on a trucker hat. No, it's a human.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like one of those eyeglass mustache
exactly
type things. Yeah.
Groucho Marx glasses. Yeah.
I'll take one here. Iron Lung by David Symanski. Really short horror game.
Very claustrophobic. Very
claustrophobic. It preys on a lot of fears: claustrophobia, fear of depths, fear of death.
Yeah.
You are I love the way the game is described. The universe is dying. You're a convict whose last chance at getting out is to search the bottom of an ocean of blood for some kind of resources, and if you succeed, you get your freedom. And that whole entire thing is just ridiculously sad and dark. And it's a really, really simple concept. You navigate the ocean floor by coordinates, because there's no viewport. You don't watch the sub actually move. You press forward, back, left, right, whatever turn, and it shows you the coordinates that you're at, and you cross-reference that with the map you have. And every now and then you snap a photo. You're supposed to snap a photo of certain things, and if you get that photo, then you complete an objective. You go to the next photo. So to navigate your way around, you scooch around, snap a photo of what's in front of you. If there's nothing there, you keep going. If you get too close to a wall, there's a proximity alarm. But that's basically it. But it's like a short horror story. It's like, I have no mouth, but I must scream type of thing. Like a really short, really succinct horror story. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun for 2-3 hours, whatever. David Symanski is prolific on the indie scene. He, not only on the games that he's worked on, but this year Gloomwood came out in early access. Not a game that I've played. And then there was one that just released,
something Goblins. I was just
Goblin Shooter or something like that, which was a micro FPS that I'm not sure if he developed that one by himself or or in tandem with somebody else. But Symanski's games are, I think they're always the ones that I've played are always really interesting, really fun short stories. But this one, the short story wasn't just interesting; it was also just the mechanic of all the creepy sounds, this ocean, pitch black, and then you kind of, as the story progresses, as the sense of dread begins to mount, it all ends in a really, I thought, in a way that I really, really liked. So that was, and this was another game that isn't necessarily a hidden gem, but we call it a highlight.
I think it's a hidden gem.
Highlight.
Sorry.
Was Moonscar? Yes.
The one that just came out was Chop Goblins.
Chop Goblins. Yeah. Moonscars.
That was mine.
Richard, tell us about Moonscars.
Moonscars is a game that actually came out back in September, and I hadn't actually started playing until this month. I've played around 8 hours of it, and I haven't beat it, admittedly, but already I think it's quite the game for the folks who like Metroidvania type games, Dark Souls-esque type games as well. But you play as a warrior named Grey Irma, who essentially is like made out of clay and bone, and she fights on presumably Earth against other creatures that are made of like clay and bone, and she's trying to find someone named the Sculptor who basically created her, of course, for reasons unknown, but that is like your goal. But throughout the game, very much reminiscent of Blasphemous.
Okay.
A little more crude looking. Actually, do you guys remember how Prince of Persia used to look? And like super like DOS early 90s. It was like very low poly.
I'm sure
Not low
I
poly.
have seen gameplay at one point in my life.
Think if
off
you
the top of my head.
Think if an 8-bit game tried to be really realistic.
Okay.
It's just a bit crude looking. Blasphemous has detail to it. You can it's very good looking, but Moonscars is a bit rough around the edges. But that's part of its charm, especially if it, it's cold and dreary presentation. But as you're a warrior who kind of has abilities, witchcraft-like abilities, and as you defeat enemies and parry them and dodge them, you gain, of course, more abilities, more upgrades to make yourself more powerful. But the game so far controls extremely well, and it generally got positive release when it came out, but I haven't really seen it being talked about much. I think the aesthetic is really, really cool, and the art style is just phenomenal for what it's presenting, and it's very, very tight controlling, really good Metroidvania that I think was overlooked.
Okay, awesome. A few more here. Ruinsmagus was another game that I reviewed by Character Bank. VR, not a
action game.
Yeah, VR action game. It wasn't. For a second, I felt like it was going to be a roguelike, but it wasn't. It's just sort of a straight up action game. But it's a really good VR combat game. You play as a wizard. You're going into these dungeons, mystical ruins, and you're completing quests and stuff. You have a shield on one hand. Your other hand fires different types of magical spells. And that formula ends up being really fun. There's a couple different types of enemies that attack you different ways. You can parry attacks. So you bring up the shield, you press a button. If you parry it, you can send it back. And what's great about VR, because you can move your arms, you can dodge out of the way of an enemy's attack, but then you can swing your shield like a baseball bat and parry it. So you can be out of harm's way, but you can parry things that are going to miss you and send it back, which makes combat really active, really fun. And the different types of spells, sometimes in a game when I'm switching abilities all the way through, that's a bad sign, because that means none of them are great. Sometimes it's a great sign, because I like everything. I'm not really sure what I like the most, so I'm constantly like figuring out what I want to do. And Ruinsmagus was the latter. I was constantly, or the former, or I don't know which one. Yeah. It was the one that I like. I was constantly switching up spells and different shields, because there was different enemies that required different tactics, or because I just really liked experimenting. So it was really well executed and really fun to do all that. It had a really fun story, really fun characters. I'm not the biggest anime fan in the world.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm not a fan of anime. But if you are a fan of anime, it's very anime. So if that's your thing, it's something that I'm sure a lot of people enjoy.
Your partner character is very bubbly, very
I forget her name. Iris, I believe her name is. She's very.
I'm thankful it's
cutesy.
not. Yeah, it's not like. For me, it didn't make me sick.
You played it as well. I forgot.
Yeah. Just a bit. I definitely dropped the ball on that one, like trying to complete it. But her as a character is the rookie archetype. She has like that rookiness
really
to
ambitious,
her.
But,
yes, but hasn't like encountered dangers. You know, doesn't really know what she's getting into. But thankfully, they don't. Very easy in the anime style to turn that to 11 and become very. Very annoying, but I thought she was fine for what she was as a character. And I found her enjoyable.
Boss fights are phenomenal. They get difficult, but not so difficult. It's a really, really good level of difficulty where you have to figure out the moves, figure out the boss, and you can actually beat the boss that way. I think some of the highlights of the games were the boss fights. And also, even though it's a really simplistic kind of... and there's a lot of exposition. It's all over the place, but at the same time, there's a lot of meaning. You learn, you meet these people in the ruins, and they're bandits. And as you get to know them, you learn that the people that they steal from, they steal so they can sell stuff to buy bread. It's really simple morality tales, but stuff that makes it a little more interesting, a little more thoughtful. There's a couple that you meet that's gay, and that the only reason they go into the ruins is because that's the only place that they can be themselves, meet together. And so a lot of really simple like morality tales and things like that. But instead of just being a mindless VR action game, they kind of went and tried to make some human story elements, which I really appreciated. But yeah, the boss fights I think were the highlight because it wasn't just one type of boss. There was bosses where it was one character and they would jump and flip and dash, and you had to dash right alongside. And then there were bosses where it was a giant tank across a chasm, and it was like a bullet hell. You were dodging left and right, and then you had to fire at the tank, and then you had to dodge more shots and stuff like that. So they really varied up the combat that way. And I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know what my favorite VR game I played this year was, but that was definitely up there. We got one more here. Marauders by Small Impact Games. I've talked about Marauders a little bit, multiplayer game in the style of Escape from Tarkov. So it's kind of like a...
Oh, really? A first-person shooter?
It's a first-person shooter and very similar to Escape from Tarkov. So it kind of has Battle Royale vibes. But how the game works is you have your loadout. Every time you go into the game, if you die, you lose everything. What you take with you, if you die, you lose it. Whatever you bring back is what you have. So it's a big risk, big reward, that type of thing.
Sounds like a better way of doing it than Divisions.
I haven't done Divisions in a long time.
Yeah.
But what Marauders does that's really cool is what they do with spaceships and whatnot. So how the game works is when you go into a match, the bulk of the combat takes place on like a central, like a space station or an asteroid that has buildings on it. You spawn into a map that's out in space, and you're in a spaceship, and you have to pilot your spaceship into the hangar. But your spaceship has a gun, and you have escape pods. So what you could do is, as soon as you get into the space, if you see another player's ship out in the distance, you can get into your escape pod, zoom over there, breach into their ship, and attack them that way. And then if they have tons of good loot on them, say they're going in to get better loot, but they have better loot than you, if you take them out, you can loot their bodies, turn their ship around, and leave, and you can steal their ship from them, that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of fun dynamics like that. So sometimes if you have a bunch of nice weapons and you want to play, but you don't feel like risking your best weapons, you can just sort of go in with a light loadout and just try raiding other players. That's fun. Once you do get into the main space stations and stuff like that, it becomes very much like Escape from Tarkov. Your friendlies don't have any signifier. You just have to know who's on your team. You just have to remember. You have to communicate. When you take out an enemy, you don't know if it's a player or an NPC sometimes, because you just shoot at someone down the hall and you get them. Could have been an NPC. Could have been another enemy player. enemy human, whatever. You just don't know. And everything is sound. Footsteps are really loud. You hear gunshots. You know where that's coming from. And then if you kill an enemy captain, which is the host if you play with a group of friends, the player that hosts the game, it's their ship that you get on, and they have a captain's card. So say you get into a match, you see a really nice ship out in the distance, but that ship enters the space station. You're like, dang. So you go into the space station. You kill a captain, some random player. That captain has a captain's ID card. So it's like, okay, you run around the station, you find a hangar bay, because every time you enter space stations, it's a hangar bay. You put that captain's ID card into the hangar bay, and it opens up the airlock. You have to get into the airlock, cycle the airlock, and then you can walk onto a player's ship. So you may happen to find that player while in game, take their key card, get to the right airlock. There's nothing telling you any of this. It's just guesses. So it's a lot of fun dynamics like that. Sometimes when you go into these big open space arenas, there are freighters that are separate from the main map, and the freighters may have something on it. And so you may get into a game where all these players go into the main space station, but you and your pals, you went to the freighter, and you went through and looted the freighter and took out the enemies there, and it was all yours. And then you escape potted out, and you exited, and you didn't face any players. So it's very random, very dynamic. But I thought that was an interesting take on sort of the Tarkov battle royale type thing. There's a lot of stuff that people don't like about the game. People have said stuff about cheating. People have said stuff about updates. I don't know. I launch the game, I play it, I have a good time, I leave. I'm not in the community. Not to say that those complaints are invalid. They're not necessarily, but
there's definitely a group of people who play the game that are more vocal about it than those who just go to enjoy it.
Sure, yeah. And one of the last updates was a save wipe, so some people were upset about that. I know save wipes are common, but I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, it's and also it feels like a horror game. The ambiances and everything. The main menu is a big shot of Jupiter that looks like the main menu from Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for one day you breach in and there's some type of like deadly alien that is hunting everybody, something like that, which would fit because the game feels like a horror game. It does not feel like an action game because it's so cold and creepy and the ambience is so like, if you played, you know what I mean. Nothing about the game is like slick sci-fi. It's diesel punk. Yeah, someone called it diesel punk. It's very gritty. It's very dark. So if they added in some kind of alien creature that just annihilated your entire squad or something like that, I think that would be a lot of fun and lean into the horror. But that's a totally different video game. At this point, I'm just make this because I like Alien, please. Okay, let's talk about soundtracks. Soundtracks, obviously.
Yes.
That's going to be tough. Because I can't really sing songs for you.
Yeah, and also it would take a lot of time if we were to speak about this and then like take a like cut away a fade in break to like the song for a bit and then like fade out.
We'll just recommend some soundtracks.
Tunic, which was a Souls-like from the Tunic team. Very great soundtrack. Iron Lung had a really creepy, very
atmospheric,
synthesized, atmospheric soundtrack. And I think David Symanski actually made his own soundtrack as well. Don't quote me on that.
A lot of those guys do.
Stray, which we'll talk about in a second. Really fantastic soundtrack. And then
Shredder's Revenge for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Lots of oh my gosh, I forgot the genre. Bit music.
Okay.
Chiptune. Yes, thank you. Chiptune, very, very upbeat, a little more advanced than Chiptune, but you could tell they tried to harken back to the Super Nintendo NES days. Very upbeat, very, very cool music. And then also some features by some of the Wu-Tang Clan members.
Oh, nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's for the children.
Yeah.
And then I just added that on there.
40K.
Warhammer 40K Darktide. Very crunchy, heavy music.
Nice. Is it like heavy metal or?
Yeah, it's in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only played the demo to Metal Hellsinger, but honestly, I could put the demo here because Metal Hellsinger.
I would argue with you. That's cheating.
I know. I know.
Cheating.
I know. Just playing the demo, but man,
not the demo. The music.
Oh yeah,
it's just songs.
It's just metal. I know. It's like saying, "Oh, Rock Band," because it has the Beatles. You know, it's just like. But they incorporated the soundtrack just amazingly. Mm-hmm. The demo is 10 minutes long. I put 2 hours into it.
Oh man, nice.
So, and the way it works in Hellsinger is the better you do. So like, as your score multiplier goes higher, more things unlock. So like at the beginning, it's just the bass or whatever. Yeah. And then once you get high enough, then the guitars kick in. And then once you get high enough, then the vocals kick in. Mm-hmm. But if you lose that or gain it, the way that they drop and go in and out is actually really seamless. But there's just these great moments where you know the words, the lyrics are about to come, and you just do some awesome kill combo, and right after the kill combo, it's just bam, kill, like right up, like perfect, right? I can't do Rottweiler Rock, but it's just like right after that, just phenomenal. But again, cheating because it's just, it's like okay,
it's like choosing Ape Out for favorite soundtrack because
it's just
it's just free jazz,
free form jazz, yeah.
Right.
I wonder why it's so interesting because people talked about Metal Hellsinger, which is. I'm sure it's a great game.
I would play the demo.
But nobody ever talked about BPM a couple years ago when it came out.
I haven't even heard
BPM is literally the same exact thing.
Really?
Yeah, but like bullets per minute. And so it's BPM, but it's like a metal like shooter, like you got to go to the beat. And then my buddy was waiting for Metal Hellsinger. I was like, dude, just play BPM. And he enjoyed BPM a lot because it was exactly what it was, the same thing. I think Metal Hellsinger, because the problem is I think BPM doesn't have a lot of licensed songs any if that it's just metal songs, so that's probably like the reason, but I find it a little disappointing.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, we'll put BPM in here.
No, that's okay.
It
came out a couple years ago, so.
Okay, this will be quick. Character / performance. Connor, did you want to get into Hank a little bit more? Is there anything else
I think I covered him enough with the highlights,
and he's not voiced.
He's not voiced. It's all text dialogue, but what they do with the text dialogue really conveys the character really well.
Are there any other animals in the game?
Yes. So there's your mom, who's also a bear, and then your two best friends, who are a wolf and a pigeon.
Is it one of those things that's like when you talk to them, you can understand everything?
Yes.
And okay, all right.
Yeah. There is one human that understands you.
Sure.
And she's a forest ranger. And
that probably makes sense. Same friends with Yogi Bear
and an old lady too. So I think there's actually two characters.
That also makes sense.
But she's like a old hippie.
Yeah.
So
okay, gotcha.
But yeah, two characters that can understand you that aren't animals. But yeah, there's a few animal characters that you interact with. There's a beaver that sells you wood. Yeah.
Wow. All right. That's a perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect salesman there. Okay. Madison. I want to talk about Madison for a little bit. Madison was a really solid horror game. It relied pretty heavily on jump scares, some of which were good, some of which weren't. But I think the performances in Madison were phenomenal. There was an attempt in Madison to make the main character, whose name is Madison, feel real. Because a lot of times you play horror games and it's like the characters don't react to the things that are going on. Either it's because you're a silent protagonist, or how do you write a character rationalizing seeing crazy, psychological horror stuff, right? Go ahead.
No, I just thought of the Mortician's Assistant game where it's partially voice acted, but because it's a demo, not complete.
Oh yeah,
halfway through
the demo,
halfway through the dialogue cuts out, so all this crazy shit is happening. And it's a silent protagonist, and it's like, oh, it's just a normal day for them. But also, Resident Evil risk with a voiced protagonist and trying to make them maybe not feel realistic, but interact with the world. You run the risk of going Silent Hill Village. Mm-hmm. Fuck you.
Yeah, where it becomes kind of B-rolly.
Yeah.
Madison, I think, does mostly a good job. Some of it's kind of silly because at some points it's like, okay, clearly, you'll be 5 minutes into a horror sequence and the main character will say, "What's going on?" And it's like, okay, well, clearly you've gone down the rabbit hole already. But the highlights of Madison are, and I may, for the SoundCloud edit, we won't be able to put it in, but for the video edit, I might put in some dialogue. you find tapes from a priest. So Madison is being haunted by a demon. And you find these tapes from a priest, right? You plug them in. And the priest is explaining how the demon works and what's going on. And just the way that it's acted, I didn't get the actor behind the priest's name or behind the priest's performance, but there is just a world weariness that comes from, and it's just 2-minute tapes. But the way he describes the demon sounds like he's been through hundreds of
The Ringer,
just hundreds and hundreds of cases, right? Like he's an old detective, and he's just taking a puff of a cigarette and saying, "I've seen this 100 times," you know.
John, I must stress to you how dangerous these demons really are. I've witnessed a few exorcisms in my time. Not everyone lived to tell the tale. These beings are not alive, and that makes them stronger than us. They entertain themselves with us. They enjoy our fear, causing us pain. They feed off of it. It gives them power, gives them strength. When one of them becomes attached to one of us, it's all but impossible to stop. They play with our bodies and minds.
Does this mean that
until they find what they were looking
that woman
for?
is attached to
They're
the
no
camera?
longer human.
Attached
They
to
are
me?
beyond everything we know. John, I implore
She's
you,
no longer human.
seek help. I'll investigate that woman you told me about, Madison Hale, and I'll get back to you as soon as I find something. Keep all of this information away from your son. Get rid of that camera as soon as you get this message, but please do be careful. If your child has already had contact with this entity, his life, yours, and your family's are in
Mom.
jeopardy.
Chanel, what have I done?
And it's
old for this
terrifying. And he describes the things that you're experiencing.
Okay.
And it's just really well done. It's just really extremely well done.
It sounds like, I mean, I'm very wrong, but it sounds like he should be voiced by Keith David.
Voiced by Ryan Cooper.
Ryan Cooper, you are the boss.
That's Priest Thomas.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Keith David would be funny,
Yeah.
but it would be also hard to take serious because I would just imagine that on the other side of that tape is Arbiter,
Yeah.
who's got like a plasma rifle, just like, you know, you got to kill these demons, but not that demon, if you know what I mean. Hey.
I went straight to Anderson.
Oh yeah. I went strait to They Lived. So
There we go.
I know.
3 different things.
Yeah, right. I went straight to the
Or
thing.
all three talking to each other.
Okay, so let's go. So art direction. Maybe not the game, but just sort of how it looks, how it, how the art is directed, the art style, whatever, however you want to define it.
Now, what do you mean by that?
I did. I put Warhammer 40k Darktide.
What did you like?
Okay, so the first thing that stands out in the game is the grandiose nature of Warhammer 40k. Just the universe itself, everything is larger than life. The ships are cathedrals. They are massive space cathedrals. So the artwork in them is like heavily influenced of like Gothic churches, big statues, big large doorways, stained glass windows. That with the future tech of 40k and the grim darkness of it, to where, oh, there's, you know, skulls in this art piece. Well, they're actual human skulls that are being used. Or the way the armor moves on some of the characters, it feels the guns when some of the stubbers shoot, the kickback from the gun and the resonant of the low end frequencies makes it feel like it's an actual gun being fired. Unfortunately, the pew pew of the las guns, because lasers, it is a little bit cartoony.
Okay.
But it's still in universe. So all around, really good design from the actual art itself of the game, to how they did audio for the game.
There's only one. It's not that Stray I thought it was bad or anything, but there's one scene that stands out to me in Stray where I stopped and I just watched it, and for some reason it just felt iconic. And it was, you're playing as the cat, you get to the first settlement, and you're at the end of this alleyway, and there's a robot on the other end sweeping.
Yeah.
And for some reason, and the robot is silhouetted, the alleyway makes the screen sort of pinpoint into the middle, and you've got the silhouette of the cat who is just peeking over a shadow, and way in the distance you see the silhouette of the robot sweeping. And for some reason, I don't know, I just that one scene, I was like, wow, that is to me it felt like someone has imagined that for years, you know, like they imagined that scene, and then in this moment they sort of brought it to life, and it's so excellent. And it's a great way of transitioning from one moment to the next, because the moment right before that, you're running from the little monster things. You jump into an alleyway, you see a sign of life, and it's like interesting. And then for the next hour or so, you're in that town and you're doing stuff.
Not just that, it's two characters seeing signs of life.
Yeah, correct.
And the shot in any other medium, I think, would be seen as a horror shot. But I kind of see it as a realization of like loneliness in the world, because it's just robots now, and he doesn't know that cats exist because cats are from the outside, and so when he looks at you, it's just like this.
Yeah,
he freaks out and gets scared and runs away. Later revealed that he thinks you were originally one of the like little things, but still, it's a very cool moment for sure. Yeah.
But of course, everything else in Stray, I think they did a great job. The robots, how their faces change, and how they like kind of what's that when you turn your head left or right?
Emote, animate.
Yeah, emote, animate, crick.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
Stuff like that. The different neon colors. The
cyberpunk aesthetic.
Yeah, sort of the cyberpunk type aesthetic. I just think all the stuff like. You play as a cat, how the cat moves, the cat sitting in the pail, all cute and stuff like that. They just did an excellent job with all that. And it's one of those things where it plays a cat, great idea. I think you could do that poorly, you know? You could play as a cat poorly. And they didn't. I think they made playing as a cat really great. You know, you can push things off ledges, and the cat's paw just does a cute little nudge. So
even in important scenes when you have to do that, it is kind of sad in some moments when you have to do that to certain things that are like very important to the cat character.
Sure. Yeah.
It was a very good game. I enjoyed it a lot.
And that may be one I go back to. Cult of the Lamb. Who had Cult of the Lamb?
The best way I can describe it is a pop-up book. It's a really flat,
that's a good way,
2D, but with depth to it, because you can move on the y-axis through the levels. But the art style of the enemies and the four bishops that you're fighting and of the lamb, it jumps back and forth between cutesy and horror, and it does it really well. Because when you're within your cult, you know, it's happy tree friends without the gore. It's these cute animals in a forest, and they're all happen to be part of a death cult. So it's adorable and wrenching at times when it's this giant worm monster that's shooting out thorns and balls of fire at you.
Is that the same developer of Binding of Isaac?
No,
I don't think it's really similar art direction.
I think it's just very similar.
Okay. Because there's that, and then there's the one where you're in the woods. What's it called? A survival game. You play in the woods. The main character has
Don't Starve.
Don't Starve.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Don't Starve. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if any of those have similar.
I don't think
developers
they're the same developer.
Okay.
But I think they approach things the same way. Cult of the Lamb is really, really eye-catching because it's. I don't know why it's always such a a very big thing for me. It's one thing watching a cartoon, but then being able to control that is very, very astounding to me. And so when you watch Cult of the Lamb, when you play Cult of the Lamb, like you're controlling an animation, and it's really, really awesome to see always because it's so fluid, how fluid it is. So it's good.
Live Alive.
Yes, Live Alive, Live Alive.
Live Alive. Sorry,
It's
Live
you
Alive.
know, Japan. you think it's the way you need to say it, and it's not. But another Square Enix game that is benefited from the 2D to HD conversion.
Okay.
Or they call it 2D HD, I believe. But the game was originally a Super Nintendo game. That's a JRPG. But I also, this sounds stupid because it is a JRPG, but it doesn't feel like one because it's very fast. JRPGs typically can take somewhere between 20 to 100 hours to beat, whereas Live Alive can only take you somewhere between 8 and 15. And the battles go very quickly, but just like Connor made the comparison to a pop-up book, I make the same comparison, and that it looks like you are taking the sprites that you would see on a Super Nintendo game and just somehow layering them in a way that creates depth and fidelity with the HDness of what they've done. And you'll see the video when you like click into it, but they show the opening intro, and then the opening intro for like the first area, depending on who you choose. There's 6 characters through different time periods that you can select. And so the first one that I chose was the feudal Japan area where you play as a ninja. But you'll see as it goes through the video of different locales of this temple. It's tough to express, or it's tough to describe how fluid the backgrounds look for it being a sprite-based game. And it's very, very, very cool to watch in motion. But yeah, Live Live is a very, very good looking game with its art direction.
Maybe I think one of the more impressive looking games that I've watched on a PS5, and I think it came out for PS4 as well. I don't remember. Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yes.
Ghostwire Tokyo, the game itself, it was okay, very generic, but we're not talking about that. The art direction in Ghostwire Tokyo was off the charts.
Absolutely.
The way that the enemies looked, the way that, I don't remember the main character's name.
I can't either,
Kenji?
unfortunately.
Maybe in Kenji, I don't remember. Anyway, all of his attacks are spells with his hand. And so when he throws an attack, he does like finger guns. And when you change the attack, he like does something with his hand to hold the next spell a different way. And it all looks great. The fluidity of it all, how they can pose a hand that way, it's really interesting. It's more interesting than some guns in games, just having a character's hand do fun stuff. And then there's what's the thing? Cat's Cradle? What's it called?
Yeah, Cat's Cradle. Yeah.
Where every now and then, one of the mechanics in the game is you expose a phantom or spirit's core. And it's kind of like in God of War when you get a character's health almost down, but it's like they're staggered and you press R3 and Kratos rips their face off or whatever. Yeah. In this, you expose their core, and the main character does like a cat's cradle where these astral lines appear, and he like manipulates them, and he like pulls, and there's like another strand going to the ghost's core, and he like pulls it apart, and the ghost core erupts. And later in the game, you can do this to like 3 ghosts at a time. So it's just, and each ghost that explodes becomes particleized.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that pushed me to finish the game was just seeing some of the cool art direction. And then just walking around Tokyo.
Yes.
As it's raining. Yeah. All the lights, all the puddles it was just phenomenal. Every single thing in that game looked cool.
Yeah.
Everything
the enemies. Yeah, everything. Yep. Absolutely. And then, of course, Ghostwire Tokyo does one of my favorite things in gaming that Alan Wake has done, that Evil Within has done, is that manipulation of your environment. So there's, right at the beginning, there's a part where you're kind of in a pseudo chasing, but once you get to the hallway disappears and you're on an invisible skywalk that you can see the entire city and everything's just kind of folding around you and revealing more stuff. And it's an insane sequence. And, you know, it does stuff like rooms turning and like appearing right before you. And it's such a treat to see. And I loved Ghostwire Tokyo for that. I will agree, you know, about its gameplay, but,
Sure.
but there's, without a doubt, is absolutely one of the best looking games this year. And I think it all has to do with its art direction.
If Tango Software, the developer, if they can take that art direction and they can make gameplay a little more unique, make it less generic, no exaggeration, they have Game of the Year on their hands.
I think so.
Because that game, I cannot emphasize enough how many times it just stopped me in my tracks with how good it looked.
Yeah.
Of course, the problem being, it wasn't that great past that.
Yeah.
But whatever. Great art direction. We will go with Hardspace Shipbreaker, which I played a little bit of.
Yes.
And I will say a few things, but you have played way more.
So yeah,
And if you want to go beyond art direction, because I know you liked other aspects of the game, feel free.
it's
up to you.
I kind of I
This
want
is
to
our
focus.
show.
I want to focus in on the art of the game.
Sure.
From the get go of it, the ships look amazing. The design of the individual ships themselves, they all have a very practical look to them, but they're all unique with their own art styles on like the surface, the interiors, the different configurations of them. All of it looks amazing. And then once you start gutting the ships and you're finding the different hard points they have to cut and everything, you start to realize these ships are actual, like they're designed to function.
Yeah. Can I make that point real quick?
Go ahead.
Because that was the first thing. So how you, like, the first ship you take apart has basically 4 walls.
Yeah.
Has a floor, a ceiling, and then 2 walls on the side. And you shoot these, you use a laser to weld these points together. And you're welding like these connectors.
Well, not together, but apart.
Yeah, you're sorry.
A laser cutter.
And as you laser cut them. And as soon as you laser cut, it just drifts off. But what that evokes is like, because when we think about airplanes, it's like you can't really, airplanes are so complex, or like aircraft carriers, they're made of thousands and thousands and thousands of parts. But this is a dystopian universe and hardship. So when you are Hardspace, so when you take apart these ships, you see, oh, this ship is like a cheaply manufactured ship. It's got 4 parts that get welded together real quick, and then there you go. It feels like a ship made on a factory line.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a cool, I don't know if they did it on purpose, such a cool way of like making the ships feel cheap and easily disposable, you know? Yeah.
And the further in you get to it, when you have to disassemble some of the like higher end propulsion systems, it becomes partially a race. And because you cut out the engine, but there's a fuel line that's connected to this engine.
Yeah.
And the specifically, I'm talking for the Quasar class thrusters.
Cannot wait to see it. Yeah.
You have to cut 4 points. All 4 points start igniting. The fuel line starts burning down, and you have to race the fire down to the fuel line. To the purge and get it before it explodes. Otherwise, half your ship is destroyed, and you're getting no money from it, and possibly you have also died.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I put that second, but in the game it makes sense to it being second.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then the DOS system that you're using for the different aspects of communication and them communicating to you and upgrading your suit and whatnot. And I don't know if it's a little not well tutorialized, but you can upgrade your gear if you didn't know.
I figured because you go to your character's apartment and there's like an upgrade. I thought I discovered someplace where
if you
could eventually upgrade your like space
when you're
stuff.
repairing it. If you hit spacebar, it brings up the upgrade menu.
Okay, yeah.
So that, and then the collectibles that you can pick up in the spaceship for like the posters and the pink bunny that you can pick up. They give life to this dystopian space apartment that you're living in.
Yes, very dystopian.
And it's all very well done. Later on, you get access to ghost ships that have been drifting unmanned.
Oh, interesting.
And they have rogue AI on them.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
And as you're going through, there are nodes you have to burn off, and as you burn them off, they scream. And as you're playing the game, you really get used to like
You're calloused. You're uncaring.
You really get used to the soundtrack that's playing.
Oh, okay.
When you go to the AI ships, it stops. And just the emptiness of it, of being in space, no sound, no soundtrack, and then you're cutting this point and it screams. It is haunting.
Wow. Okay.
And then you find the helmet that's floating inside the ship, and you pick up the audio log, and you can play the audio logs right there. And I don't want to spoil anything for it because you're playing through it a little bit, but it is chilling. And I look forward to every time a ghost ship pops up in the queue, even if I'm like halfway through like a $30 million ship, and this one's only like $8 million for this ship, but it's a ghost ship. I'm like, fuck this ship. I want that one. I want the spooky one.
Sure, definitely. I can't wait. That's really exciting. Kenna, Bridge of Spirits. I think we both played it. Yeah, I don't know. I think Kenna Bridge of Spirits is the closest thing I've seen to like a DreamWorks video game.
Yeah, brought to life.
The way that
Literally.
the way that the cutscenes are shot. And also just the way the main character moves. It's so smooth, so playful and colorful. How the enemies look, how your little spirit things bob up and down as they follow you. It's just a beautiful game. Front to back, up to down. Yeah.
And never once, and it's unfortunate because you see the cover art, and it's very simple, and it does look like, oh yeah, this is probably a DreamWorks movie type game, and then you play it, and I never felt once like it was a kid's game, if that makes sense.
No, yeah,
a kid could play it, but there were definitely a lot more serious moments and serious themes at hand when you play the game, and I really like it a lot, and I think it's something that a lot of people should play, and I hope kind of goes down in the future as one of those like hidden gems that everyone should play. But the foliage in that game is some of the best I've ever seen, and the environments are incredible to look at, along with a lot of the particle effects when you like attack enemies and when you use your bow that you have. It's a very, very, very gorgeous game.
A few quick ones here. Into the Radius, which I made a video about. Into the Radius, I think it mixed. So Into the Radius is inspired by Stalker, which is inspired by Roadside Picnic, which is based in Soviet science fiction, Soviet fiction, the Zone, right? And it's a metaphysical concept. In Stalker, the Zone shows you your innermost desires. So that's where you go to learn something about yourself. So a lot of these games like Stalker that are inspired by these things, they have to balance it out. How much of the Radius do they want to unpack scientifically and have lore? How much of it is just going to be metaphysical and weird? Into the Radius, I think, handle that really well. Into the Radius's world is twisted and weird. Some of it's frozen in time. The enemies are like look like ghosts, have different functions to them. There's like a spidery enemy that I really liked because it just looks like an octopus that is crawling along the ground and stuff like that. It's really interesting. And to see that juxtaposed up against a Hind helicopter that is frozen in mid-crash is really cool. And you have this giant fog wall around you that surrounds you. And that fog wall is how you exit and enter. And sometimes things are silhouetted against that fog wall, and it looks really, really damn good. So I have mixed feelings about the game itself, but I think they did a good job with the art direction for a genre that is well tread at this point, with a lot of different games that have been inspired by that kind of thing, and how they handled that. Tunic. A little bit about Tunic. I didn't play it much. The art direction in Tunic was great. One of the menus looks like you're taking that pack out of a game, the booklet.
Oh yes,
the
menu. Yes,
and you're flipping through the booklet. That's what the menu in the game kind of looks like. I thought that was great. Last one on here, Victoria 3.
Okay, so guys, hear me
Tell
out.
us
User
about-
interface. I really want to talk about when you're zoomed in on the individual provinces, because the camera perspective changes and everything becomes tilt shifted, and it looks beautiful. As you develop these provinces, the provinces themselves change. So if you start building up more of the urban center, the actual cities themselves start to grow and expand. You see the barracks that have been built. You see those in the city. If you build up different factories, you see those within the city as well. But the surrounding landscape changes as well. If you build an iron mine, you see part of the land has now been, there's like excavation going on.
Oh,
there's being a
interesting.
strip mine. If you build up forestry, you see parts of the forest have been clear cut. You see stumps. You see like logging rigs. And then as you progress through the different technologies and you get trains, you start running train lines across your country. The trains are adaptive to what resources are coming in and out of the towns. So if you have an area that's heavily logging, the train leaving that section is just a long logging train.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then as you get into war, the little forts that pop up where the actual battles are happening, they're dynamic to the technologies. So, you have heavy artillery, you'll see more explosions and stuff like that. Or if it's more infantry, then you just see sporadic gunfire. But all of this is tilt shifted so that it has it's a very artistic look at this really zoomed in area, and it's very beautiful.
Makes the map a little more active and stuff like that. Compared to other Paradox games, is it probably the most active when it comes to stuff on the map? Okay, interesting. That's cool. All right, so we'll get to the big. I don't think there's anything I missed there. I think we.
I don't think so. I think we covered
got
it.
to everything. We'll get to the big, gigantic, big games. I'll talk about one real quick. Sleeper Citizen. Jump Over the Age. Was one of the best games I played this year. Is one of the best stories I've experienced in a video game. Some of the best characters, some of the best writing, and it was. Incidentally, I was playing it a little bit after I watched Severance, which is a fantastic TV show. But anyway, they have very similar themes, and I just thought, oh well, what a coincidence. But Sleeper Citizen, you play as an android who has a person's consciousness copied and pasted into you. So you are somebody else's consciousness, but that person is asleep, and a corporation bought their consciousness, implanted into you, and you are essentially a slave. So you are on the run, and you go to a space station, which is a Babylon 5/DS9 type place, a way station for all kinds of people and all kinds of walks of life. And, some people you talk to and some people you meet, they have different side quests, and some of them are side quests that are really endearing. You meet a father and his child, and the father's just trying to take care of his kid and trying to figure out a better life kind of a thing. You meet some people, and these people are borderline pirates who are protecting refugees, and their prior experiences in the world has made them bitter and angry. You talk to even more people. They're in gangs on the station, and they're in constant competition with the station's security. And all of those people's lives are the most important things to them. And you, as the main character, you kind of get to decide how involved you're going to be in these things and what you want to do. And there comes a time where the ending of the game happens, and that's how the game ends. You leave. Some storylines are left open. You may have a quest that you were supposed to do for a character, and you just don't get to do it. And there's a finality there, and I thought that was really meaningful, because you have to make this game, the decisions matter, and it's about deciding, finding happiness, finding a way out of a horrible situation. So Sleeper Citizen was extremely well written. The gameplay, I guess, is similar to Disco Elysium, which I still have not played, but similar to that, which means every day on the station before you have to go to bed important, because you're managing your dice and stuff like that. the different classes in the game that you start as, you just get a bonus to your. At the end of the game, once you have all the upgrades, the classes don't really matter. The class is just how you start, but it makes things interesting for other playthroughs. And also, there are different paths to go down. If you want to get more involved with the gangs or more involved with the security team, you can follow those paths and see where the game takes you. But I would love to go through the game a second time and do things differently, make different choices, and see what happens. I had one character who seemed really important, and the character just disappeared. And I never saw them again. And I thought that was really interesting, because that kind of happens in life sometimes. You meet somebody, you go to a class, maybe it's somebody you see at work, and then they just disappear. You never see them again, that kind of thing. Maybe every now and then you wonder, how are they? Where'd they go? Hope they're doing well. And that's kind of how the game is. Really fulfilling story, tons of fun. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend it to anybody who wants to play a really solid, narrative-heavy RPG. The Half-Life 2 VR mod was one of the most awe-inspiring things I have ever played. And it was just Half-Life 2.
Yep. Again.
Yeah.
How many times in the last, 15, 20 years?
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about it. I don't know what it is about VR, but man, just standing in some of those places, I don't think it was the nostalgia. I think it was just the power of VR to transform, the mysterious City 17, and now it surrounds you.
Yes.
And obviously Alex took you there as well, but the mystique of Half-Life 2 to be there.
Yeah.
And it made me think, could you imagine what it would be like Silent Cartographer VR? And I know there are VR mods out there, but the job that the VR2 Half-Life, the VR Half-Life 2 team did, it was like, it made Alex feel like Alex was a sequel to a really old VR game. They did great.
And it's that extra step that I think some people want when they play games. And I've played games before where I've stopped and have been like, man, I wish I was here. Like this place is cooler. Like, oh man, I wish I could see that. And so you kind of have that, and it's fun to sit there and look at everything up close. It's fun and terrifying when I have to stand as far as I can away from a head crab and like kind of like,
yeah, right.
I don't want you to get close to me because arachnophobia and stuff. And it's also just as enthralling being in the elevator and Alex is right there and you're just like, hi Alex.
Yeah.
There's, because
high five.
Because that was one of the things in the original Half-Life 2 is I know it's programming, but Alex, if you stare at her long enough, she can like side eye you or look at you and just be like, hey, and then just kind of like look at it, and it's that extra, it's just that extra thing of being there and feeling that non-existent oppression when you walk into like City 17 and how dreary it is, and it's like, pick up that can. It's like, and
you're physically picking it up or something.
Yeah, or you have to do it, and it sounds silly. It sounds silly that just this adaptation into VR can change so much about how you experience it. It's astonishing. And like we always talk about, it's just make more of the old games make original Deus Ex into VR.
Sure.
Like,
Dead Space.
How cool.
We can go on and on. Fear.
Bioshock.
Obviously that's not easy. We're not saying that's easy.
That's not. For some engines it is.
Yeah, maybe.
Because the
relatively speaking.
Just as a quick anecdote, the RE engine, the guy who made the VR mod for Resident Evil 7 on PC came out and was just like, yeah, actually, because it's all made in the same engine, you could just put this on any of them and it'll work. And so Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Monster Hunter has the potential to be in VR as well. Like it's astounding.
And it unlocks a different level of immersion, a different level of presence. The one thing I think about the gameplay that was a eureka moment for me was Half-Life Alyx was made to be accessible, which is good.
Yes.
Big VR games need accessibility. You want as many people playing VR as possible. However, there's going to be natural drawbacks to that. More accessible means less immersive, means less active, right? So one of the big things about that was the antlions and Alyx were turned into shooting galleries, which was fine. Still a lot of fun. But I was curious, would fighting the antlions Half-Life 2 style work? Because antlions in Half-Life 2 jumping all over the place, they're coming out of the ground, they lunge at you, it's hectic. And so I got to that point and I was like, holy shit, it works. I'm running around really fast in VR, I'm turning left, turning right, hitting them with the shotgun. It worked. And I was like, wow. I was really impressed by that, because that's the first time, it's a VR mod, but that's the first time I've played like a hectic shooter in VR. And it worked really well. So they did a good job implementing that, and it made me wonder, like, like where will they go?
Yes.
If another Half-Life game comes out in VR, will they be a little more liberal or progressive or whatever with the kind of the pace that that combat has? Oh man, and you're talking about being in those scenes, like. It's one thing to watch all those characters interact, but when you feel the scale is a little off, but when Alex and Eli Vance are as tall as you, and instead of looking at a screen, it feels like they look into your eyes when they roll their eyes or something. It's just like, it makes you feel like a kid. It's just great. What do we want to do next? Do we want to do God of War? We want to do Horizon Forbidden West?
Let's do Forbidden West.
Yeah.
Let's do Forbidden West, because ultimately would probably end up on God of War. But
okay. I liked Forbidden West a lot. There was a lot I didn't like in Forbidden West. But I think the thing that I took away from Forbidden West the most was a story about a character who was trying to bear too much of a burden. And I thought, what an interesting story, because video games are so centric about a person, Shepard, the Inquisitor, the Master Chief. So many video game stories are about the player character. And Horizon Forbidden West was, yes, Aloy is important, but you need Zoe. You need all these other characters from all these different factions of the world to help you overcome the great odds. And I thought that was a fun way of telling a story. Maybe not necessarily unique. It's not the first story that says we need to do this together, but I think they did it well.
Right, considering that the first game was essentially all about Aloy doing it herself, since she was the only one who had access to any of this information. That was her quest in the first one. And as annoying as it was at the start of the game, to have Aloy consistently shut down the people who wanted to help, eventually it does come back around as you speak more to these characters. And I think all of them, all of the characters in the game are absolutely astounding and excellent and extremely well acted.
Yes, yeah.
And I think the Decima engine has a really, really, really good facial capture. Despite what people say about the first game, I still think the first game had some pretty good facial animation. This one goes even further with it. And the earliest example, of course, is when you speak to the Sun King right at the beginning. You can tell he has a thing for Aloy, or is interested in her. And when you speak to him and tell him that you have to leave, his body language, his facial expressions, you could just tell he's very much crushed on the inside. And then when you tell, oh my gosh, I forgot his name, with the mohawk.
Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron.
Is that correct?
Yeah. When you tell Aaron that you don't need him,
he's disappointed.
and he's so disappointed. It's really, really.
And it's just not the main characters.
Right.
It's like everyone you come across. There's so much emotion in the game. Yeah. There's a character that Aloy meets at a bar.
Yeah,
and there's
your
like
old
a couple,
friend,
and they kick back a few drinks, and what they did with the Decima engine is just one of those engines where it's like, you could render somebody laying bricks and it's going to blow your mind.
Yeah,
like it's just one of the best looking engines out there. Right along the RE engine.
Yeah,
it's like things are just going to look good. I think maybe the thing that bummed me out the most was the combat. I think like mid game. Once I got mid game, the combat stopped.
Yeah.
Because a lot of Aloy's alternate abilities and stuff like that, I don't think it's just my preference. I think it was just like, that isn't that useful.
Right, exactly.
Because I appreciated it because it gave all the weapons additional abilities that you unlock. Some of them I used the crap out of. But like the The slingshot had an ability where the bomb bounced,
Oh, okay.
and it was like,
I don't remember that. I don't,
Yeah, it was
because I didn't use it, and it goes back to what you said. About,
some of the abilities just felt like we got to give this weapon another ability. This one,
yeah.
and it just wasn't as useful.
And I think it's because it falls into the sequelitis trap where we have to add things, we have to make things better, we have to expand what we've done when sometimes that's not needed. But yes, there I feel a lot of the things that a lot of the upgrade trees that you have as Aloy, a lot of the extra abilities you have, I never used and I never thought about using because it just felt like in the battles that I fought, I never needed them.
Yeah.
And some people, probably use them very well and to great effect, but I can go through that entire game just on default mode and be just fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
The ending, I think we both thought was kind of dullish.
Yes.
What's her name? Marianne Trinity.
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Carrie-Anne Moss. Yeah. Again, another great performance.
I think
I
she
had
was a
no
great
idea
character.
she was in the game. There were some of the best scenes in the entire game were her and Aloy.
I
Some
agree.
of the dialogue between them was phenomenal. But the ending, I kind of thought was the villains. I didn't think were that interesting because you didn't really get to know them as much.
No, you didn't.
You just knew they were bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the ending, it's just like there was a couple twists and turns at the end, and it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It became about something else, a hive mind thing.
Oh, right. And the way they describe it kind of is just that, well, how the hell are we supposed to stop this? Like, what can Aloy do that these superpowered people couldn't?
Right.
So
exactly.
it kind of not jump the shark, but just,
it could be great. I don't know.
It could be, but I know that, of course they announced the DLC and I already know it's like, you're not going to answer any of my questions. Like it's going to be, Frozen Wilds was like before the final, before the last part of the game. So it's probably going to be something regarding that. But I do want to give Horizon a second chance because
Me too.
Came out a week before Elden Ring, and it came and I did play Elden Ring for X amount of hours before I went back to Horizon. And when I got into Horizon again, it was just, I loved the first game so much. And this one, I think I just have open world fatigue at the moment, which
very checkboxy.
It's very checkboxy, but God of War alleviates that because their open worldness is segmented.
Yep.
It's not, which is actually impressive in its own for Horizon Zero Dawn, having that entire map, Forbidden West, having that entire map in San Francisco, Las Vegas, whatever.
The environments were stunning.
Being all
sure.
available to you immediately. Like it's very, very, very cool. And and then you said environments, arguably, I think probably I probably the best looking game this year, in my opinion.
I don't think that's crazy because when I think back to because the combat does look phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
The combat is still really good. I forget what I said this about. I've said this about a different game, but I don't think Forbidden West was a step back or a step forward. It kind of just like a step to the side.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the best
diagonal.
Yeah, like a little bit diagonal. Like a lot of the good stuff from Zero Dawn was there. There was some better stuff, but overall it was kind of like the same vibe. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, you were saying something.
I think it's the best looking game this year.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy.
Consistently. Because and not to say that Elden Ring or God of War doesn't look good, but I have saved screenshots that I was going through today because I was looking for video, and I looked at those screenshots, and they're still just jaw dropping more so than some of the stuff I've seen in Elden Ring and God of War. So
yep. Real quick, it isn't a game, but the Steam Deck is a game changer. The Steam Deck could very well become, I think, is something that could just change the way people play games, and I think already has. It does not compete with the Switch, but in a very specific market, it has already won people who plan to do things on the Switch.
Yeah.
I was planning to play all my top-down RPGs on the Switch, and after I finish Baldur's Gate 2, I'm not touching the Switch again because everything is going to be on my Steam Deck. Hardspace Shipbreaker is a really good-looking game, art direction-wise, but like fidelity-wise, it's good. It's solid. That's the game that I don't mind playing on the deck, even though I'm going to have to downgrade the visuals, So there's stuff like that. not a game, but I think the Steam Deck could really disrupt certain markets, disrupt the way we play games. Not to the point where it competes with the Switch, no, but definitely in a way that it changes things.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about Elden Ring, which is the worst game ever. No, I'm kidding.
Yep.
I don't. Where do you even begin with Elden Ring?
I don't know. I'm very glad it exists. I'll say that. I loved it. I loved it. I put 90 some hours into it. I love it. I think it's a phenomenal game all around. But I also am very reductive in saying that it's just open world Dark Souls. You know, I love what I found in it. But if you can tell me what's different about it, well, it's open world. It is beautiful. There are definitely areas that are very good. Like when you first go down that elevator and then just see this like underground area that has like galaxy, you know, in a lost city and stuff like that. It is truly, truly astounding. And the monster designs are insane. And the gameplay is great too. The biggest drawback I have against it, and the same as yours, and people will argue with you about, well, not you, but I've seen the argument online between people, and it's just, does not have a story that I want to be told to me. Sorry, hold on. The story isn't given to me how I want it, and that could be my fault, sure, but I think that's ultimately a fault. I don't want to say a fault of the game.
Yeah, because it's just their style.
Not everybody, a large majority of the people are not somebody who will go out to find that type of stuff. They won't take the time.
Oh yeah, I did
to look at an item and let me see the history of this item. You know, I can't even do that in Destiny. I can't even do that in, you know, Genshin Impact and other games that have that importance. I have a hard time doing it on God of War even. But you know, I do sometimes like, oh, what is that? But not to give me the reason I need to continue, because that's what happened. About 90 hours in, it was like, why am I doing this?
Well, yeah. As soon as I started the game, I was like, I'm not going to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not because I couldn't sit there and piece together what was going on. I just knew that I wasn't in the mood to do it. So I was going to play the game. I was going to get my ass kicked by a bunch of random monsters, and that's fine. But but I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that it's there. I think we're all in that same boat though, because I think there are some people who love that kind of cryptic storytelling and some people that don't. And that's fine. I think it's interesting. One day I may want to really get into it and figure things out, but
there's lore videos for that.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't this time. I think Elden Ring is another game where art direction shines because Elden Ring is not the best looking game. Just from a pure fidelity standpoint, but I think the way that the map is structured, what you can see in the distance, just how the architecture of certain things From Software is famous for this. Everything is interesting. Everything looks great. And that's been turned up to 11 with Elden Ring. And what we all experienced when Elden Ring first came out was really special because it was I think for the first time in a long time, it was a lot of word of mouth. You and I were talking, and it was like, "Hey, did you go over here? Did you check this out? Go this way. Which way was the statue pointing? Blah 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 blah."
Yes,
Our camera ran out of battery. Oh well.
Oh, wow,
it's fine. I forgot to plug it in. My fault. The camera was a boss in Elden Ring, and I died
right in the middle of it.
But I thought that was really special because I don't remember the last time a game did something like that. You know, I don't remember the last time everybody was figuring something out because there was a lack of quest markers and stuff like that. And that was great. And yeah, I'm in the middle. I think, yes, it is just open world Dark Souls, but I think that could have been done poorly. And instead they did it where I think there are going to be games now that try to mimic the open world style, but with a different type of combat. They're going to provide you with a lack of quest markers, a lack of hard information, but the combat's going to be different. It's not going to be the same Dark Souls combat or something like that. I think it's going to be tons of games like that. Similar in the way that, you know, after Breath of the Wild came out, you had a few games where you look in the distance and you put a dot, and you'd follow that dot, and that's kind of how you found things. Sable is kind of like that. So I think it's going to provide that kind of inspiration, and we'll see where it goes. But I think we're all in the same boat. I put a lot of hours into Elden Ring. I beat a really, really difficult boss, and instead of being a cheerful ending, it was the penguins getting to Antarctica and Madagascar. They were just standing there.
Yeah.
Well, this sucks. They get back on the boat. I beat this boss, and I was like, okay, and that's just me. But that's not to take away from it. It's just my preference kind of thing. So I put as much as I wanted into it, and then I was kind of just done with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like a brick wall. I was just, I'm done.
Which is something that I've said several times this year is not a bad thing.
Yep.
You put in what you enjoy, and then you dip out. And that's not a bad thing. That's just, we take it for what it is.
Okay. Let's talk about...
Real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Because I wanted to bring up a point about the not remembering the last time a game did away with, or people word of mouth. That's what I'm trying to get to that point. That was optional in Red Dead 2. You could turn off the minimap.
Yeah.
And then it's all self-exploration.
Yeah, you could.
And
I mean, I'm not gonna. That's optional in any game. And there's a lot of games where you could really make it immersive and turn everything off. But I think the idea is their design philosophy is built with that in mind. We want people to explore. We want people to have to, because it wasn't just no quest markers. It was also, how the hell do you defeat this enemy? This big walking thing with a bell. That's a cool environmental detail, but it's not. You have to get it to take a knee. Well, how the hell do you do that? What's this weapon? Where do you get this weapon? How do you get this ability for this weapon? It's everything that is word of mouth, that is discovery, that takes a lot of guts to make. So I know you don't think it's as big of a deal. And
I was going to say, maybe I just didn't put enough time into it, but I really wasn't impressed by Elden Ring as other people were.
We don't want to get bomb threats, okay? Just say it's the greatest game ever. Just to, yeah.
Well, if you have any threats, send them to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Joe Biden's going through his mail. Fuck you for saying Elden Ring is bad. What's this, Jack? I'm tired of this, Jack. He goes, gets himself a PS5 10 hours later. I don't remember what his wife's name is, but he's like, hey Jill, I'm 10 hours into this Elden Ring contraption here, and I got myself a Scythe. See, that's my Joe Biden for some reason. Okay, let's talk about God of War Ragnarok then.
Finally, the God of War podcast.
We both finished God of War Ragnarok.
Yes, we both did.
I thought it was better than 2018.
I agree.
And I thought the ending was great. I thought the entire game was great. I've read some people I've seen some things about people not liking the combat, and I disagree. I think 2018 was really unique.
Yes.
The combat was really unique. Mm-hmm. And this game adds a few folds to it, but doesn't change much. And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's different enough that I had to take a different approach to it. But, I had to figure it out, and once I figured it out, it was like, okay, great. But
I had to figure it out too, and it came to me way too late. It came to me after I was done with the game.
Okay,
and I don't think that was it was a problem for me, because in 2018, I loved the combat, and I loved using it. I loved the way it worked, and for some reason in Ragnarok, I don't know why it didn't click with me, but just a real funny statement. I beat the game, and my friend sent me a clip of what he was doing, and I had realized I had never gave Atreus any powers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the entire game. Yeah, and so I'm sitting here in the final moments of the game, and I'm just like, God, I remember Atreus being able to do so much more, because all he was able to do was just shoot arrows, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I sat there and I was like, oh yeah, of course. he had the stag in the first game. He had like whatever in the first, and I was like, why didn't? And I started to like kind of fiddle around, and I kind of realized, although they're similar, I think that something about the UI I think was worse in in Ragnarok. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's my own problem because it's probably like attention, ADHD or whatever. Because it's like because I start looking through it and I start reading it, and it was just a lot more information than I remember there having to be. And then I kind of was just like, oh, whatever works. And, I went on. Because I gave powers to Freya, but I never gave powers to Atreus. And can't do that anymore. but now, but after the game, it clicked and I was fighting berserkers and I was like, here we go. I get it. Couple of hits here, switch to the next weapon. Couple of hits here, do your L1 circle. Don't, combo it. And it's just, and it just clicked. Mm-hmm. But it took till after the game to do it. But that's okay, because depending on how you play God of War, you did a lot of side stuff before you finished it, I think.
Basically everything at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So I only did some side stuff. And the great thing is now that I'm done with the game, they go, there's still more to do. Mm-hmm. Like, cool. And now it's like, before the game ended, one of the character's dogs is like, hey, you got to follow me. And I was like, I'll do that later. Mm-hmm. I did it today, and it's like a whole ass another section of Vanaheim is available to you.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is great. I have more game.
Oh, okay. This is fascinating.
But yes, but if I did that before the game and just knocked it all out, I would have been like, okay, there's not much to do. I just got to go collect stuff. But now here I'm sitting here like, I can't wait to explore. I can't wait to do everything. You've got
sort of a better grasp on.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I think one thing that we talked about when God of War, at our podcast after it released, was, and I think you and I both brought this up, the combat feels more fluid than in 2018.
Yeah, it feels like it's a little more complicated. Mm-hmm. So you have sonic arrows and you have sigil arrows, and the sigil arrows you have to build up a sigil rune, mm-hmm. and it takes a few shots for that to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to have some patience there. You can't just mash the buttons, right?
Well, I'm talking about that. Kratos.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, like Richard was getting to, the swapping between weapons and comboing, it feels, I mean, it's as it was intended to be played, but it feels really good to work those combos together, swapping between the different weapons and comboing their abilities, and you feel like an actual God of War that is just reaping terror through these enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think in 2018, the different weapons sort of filled different purposes, mm-hmm. and in this one, that's emphasized because we'll put spoiler tags here. Spoiler tags from here on out.
Yeah.
There's a third weapon you get.
Yes.
Which adds more folds to combat and makes things even better. And when you learn how to use that weapon, you unlock a whole different way of beating bosses, learning boss moves and stuff like that, because now you've got this other trick in your pocket. And when you unlock that, that's when things get really, really good.
Which is so great, because that weapon is Kratos's. It's his.
Drop near spear. We'll just say it.
The drop near spear. Yeah. Because the axe mm-hmm. was his wife's. Was given to him.
Phase, yeah.
And the Blades of Chaos weren't his. They were a punishment. Mm-hmm. Like, they were a punishment of what he did in Greece. But this weapon is specifically made for him. And it's his alone. And it's very apt that it's a spear, because that is the main weapon of
And he even says that.
Spartan, yeah.
He says when he gets it, he's fighting with it, and Brock's like, "You like that spear?" And he just says, "Yes, it's the first weapon Spartans are trained with," as he's like beating away at the different frog things. So yeah, I thought everything.
Brock impersonation.
Thank you. I tried my best there. Story wise, I thought it was phenomenal. Kratos changed. It's a story about the nature of things. Do people have a nature, right? And that theme is carried throughout the game, because so much of the game is about elements: mm-hmm. fire, ice, wind, Ragnarok is a combination of the fires of Muspelheim and the like coldness of Niflheim
Helheim.
or whatever, and Helheim or whatever, yeah, whichever one it is. But it's like the base elements of it. When Brock goes to make Dropnir, he talks about we're going to a forge, but it's not your normal forge. And Kratos asks him, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, it's the nature of a forge, not necessarily the things of a forge. I thought that was really interesting. And it's all about the nature of these people. Can Kratos be better? Can he change? Can Thor change? Can Odin change? And that's what the entire game is about. And there's a scene at the end of the game where, and again, we're getting into heavy spoiler territory. Connor, if you want to leave the room, you can.
It's fine.
Are you sure?
At the rate I'm playing it, I'm not going to beat it till 2034.
Okay. There's a scene. It's your final fight with Thor. And Thor is rocked by guilt, drink. I think he obviously dislikes Odin. Everybody dislikes Odin.
Anger.
Yeah, just all kinds of stuff. And hell, it may be a game about mental health. We talk about some characters. But they fight, and Kratos doesn't want to kill Thor. And at one point, they fight. They go at each other. Kratos almost kills Thor. They stop fighting. They have that moment where they're both like on the ground, slowly getting up. And Kratos is pleading, like, can we stop this? And Thor says, do you know what I've done? Right? Like, as if Thor deserves to die. And Kratos says simply, yes. And then puts his axe away. And the idea is we have to be better for our children. Because Thrud sort of looks up to her father, but also sees her father drink and be sloppy. And
is disappointed
and is
by
really
that,
disappointed by that. And Atreus has seen what he does and has exposed that to Atreus and has seen a little bit of his bad side in Atreus at times, especially in the first game. So it's about we need to be better for our children. And at the end of the game, the person who actively chooses not to change is Odin. And that's what seals his fate, which I thought was really well written. But I mean, there are so many character moments in this game that are just between whatever, Kratos and Brock, Sindri and Atreus, Freya and Kratos and all that stuff. And you walk away from the game and it's a happy ending, but it's also an uncertain ending. And I really like that because heavy spoilers. Sorry, I'm saying that. I know you listening may know that, but I'm saying this for Connor's sake. A character dies and it makes Sindri very upset to the point where Sindri turns into a different person. And you don't know if Sindri will be able to forgive Atreus and Kratos. You know, Freya is at the beginning of the game, she just wants to kill Kratos. That's the only thing she lives for is revenge. And eventually they ally with her. And at the end of the game, she captures Odin. And before she kills him, she starts to torture him.
Yes.
And it's like, and for that moment, that Freya that you thought was left to the past, you're like, oh shit, that's the Freya from the beginning of the game. Like, she's still here. And I thought that was kind of a dark scene. And at the end of the game, you wonder, has Freya changed? Or does that anger and that ruthlessness, is it still there somewhere? Even though Odin's gone, does Freya still feel some of that? And of course, Kratos. Kratos has really changed. But has he really escaped his past? You don't know. And you don't know where they're going to take the next game. I assume there has to be something. But
I slightly disagree with your last 2 points.
Okay, go ahead.
Just due to the fact what we see on the premonition board, I think he has passed that.
Okay, sure.
There is a line, because when you beat the game, there's of course more to do, and they talk about more stuff after the fact, which is really great.
A lot of closure.
And there's a part where you go to Vanaheim, and now the Vanaheim house the Aesir, and you find Sif there, and Freya and Sif talk, and they seem to actually like each other. They have liked each other,
Yes.
but now it's like, now we can move on. Now we can
Rebuild.
Let's do this. When you're on the boat and looking around, I think Mimir says, Freya says, "Oh man, will Vanaheim ever come back to its original form or whatever?" Kratos says something along the lines of, "It is, as long as the person who's in charge, it's a reflection upon that person." And he was talking about Freya, because Freya is now, the leader of Vanaheim, and she has this like, "Do you really mean that? Like, thank you." Like, just this very humbled response. And I think that she's better than before, because if she wasn't, she would have did what was needed at the end, and she did.
Sure. And she did.
So.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And Sindri did.
Oh yeah,
which was the really dark moment, because the Sindri of 10 hours before that you would have never imagined, but he becomes so despondent. Yeah, I think, I don't know, it was just a really enriching, really fulfilling, some of the most since Red Dead 2, getting to know characters, getting to know their humanity. I'm really excited to see what Atreus is up to, because I think his story is really interesting.
Yeah.
And honestly, if this is the end of Kratos, I would be fine with that. I know that's not possible for millions of reasons, but it's a little like the ending of Last of Us 2. Like, if there is never again a Last of Us game, I'm okay with that. Because the Last of Us 2's ending, I think, was thought-provoking enough, was drab enough, where it left all the pieces in place where I'm like, I think this is a good way to finish out the series. It's not going to be a happy ending. Ragnarok, on the other hand, is different, but where the characters are and what they've earned, I think that's interesting. But if they did do another game that involves Kratos somehow, I'd be fine with that. I think they have to be careful with it, because I do think it could be cheesy if Kratos just goes into another realm.
And he's angry
and there are jokes
again,
about him like going into Christendom and taking on Jesus or something.
Yeah, I mean, if they do, they do another game, this is spitballing. Time skip, Atreus is older, Angerboda is with him.
Sure.
Them trying to find the Jotnar.
Yep.
Because that is, mythology-wise, Loki and Angerboda are husband and wife, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
interesting. Okay. I did not know that. Okay.
She's the mother of beasts and the mother of Fenrir. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the lore.
Oh, okay.
In Norse mythology.
Yeah,
so.
in Norse mythology, Loki is the mother and father of Sleipnir too.
Interesting.
A horse is also the father.
By the way, I loved the. It was a small, not twist, but a small explanation. But I loved the world serpent thing.
Yes.
Oh my god! I was so.
Yes. Do you want to explain everything?
All right. So early on in the game, we find out that you played the beginning. Atreus, says that spell, and a soul comes out of Fenrir, and it goes somewhere. We find out that he's able to insert souls into things. So he inserts soul of a giant from these marbles that you find into a snake. Snake leaves. It's a small snake. It leaves. Later on in the game, Angerboda is like, "Hey, that snake kind of got bigger." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, really big." And in the final battle, in the background, Thor and the snake are fighting each other. Yeah. And Thor hits him, and he just disappears. And so the mythology is that Thor hit him so hard that snake went back in time. So that snake was, it was the world serpent that Loki put the soul into, that got sent back in time and grew up in the first game. So it was just like, wow, that's cool. Yeah, I should have figured it out earlier. But
so Jorgunmander exists in past, present, and future.
Yeah,
almost like an Ouroboros. What is that called? Ouroboros, like a snake eating.
Yeah, because when you first meet him in God of War, I guess he's like, "Hey, you're familiar, Atreus."
Let me give you a little hint about Norse mythology. Jorgunmander is an Ouroboros. It is a snake devouring itself.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was great too. You actually see it. It makes a point of like, you climb up a ledge and you get to the top of the ledge and you just see. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, there goes Jorgunmander. Yeah,
I can probably say there was 2 things I didn't like. 2 to 3 things I didn't like. I did not like, heavy spoiler, I'm just going to say it because you said it, heavy spoiler. I did not like the way Thor died. Not so much him dying, him just disappearing,
Okay.
going into like goes into ashes because no one else does that. Like no one else did that.
I wonder if there's a reason behind that, because now that you brought it
Thanos
up,
snapped.
Could be, yeah. Basically, yeah. Which is like, oh, okay. I don't like the way Freyr went out.
that was a little kind of cheap too, I thought. Yeah.
Is shit, what's his name? Surtur. I love Surtur.
Yes.
I love Surtur. But
Yep.
Surtur is over Asgard, like, stabbing it to destroy it. Freyr's like stopping him with Ingrid and his sword. But Surtur has to do this, like
To
up,
destroy
down, up, down.
Asgard, yeah.
Yeah, so like he hits it down and Freyr stops him, but he's just like, just go. And it's like, well, when he lifts up again, just come with us. Like
Yeah.
it's not, so, you know.
It was kind of a weird sacrifice, definitely.
Okay. And then this is not needed whatsoever. But I do wonder what happened to Mjolnir. I don't think that Kratos or anybody deserves it. But I would hope it would have went to like Thrud or like
I'm going
Sif.
to tell you one thing.
I do find out. I bet I find
Go
out.
to Alfheim.
Okay, I'll go there
That's
eventually.
all I'll say.
There
There isn't a quest marker for it. You know the two big deserts out in Alfheim?
Oh, you know what? What's her name just told me to go check out Alfheim. Okay, all right.
So go to the teleport that is right before those two big deserts.
Okay.
The one
All right.
that like leads out into the first one.
Sure.
Go to that one.
All right, I'll find out.
Turn around.
All right, I'll find
There
it.
you go.
I found
Yeah,
it.
because she tells you that for a reason.
Yeah. I'll get
So-
there. I got to do the rest of it. But I mean, performances also.
Oh
by
my
the
god,
way.
off the charts. This is the best acted game of all time. I'm saying it right fucking now.
I had
Red Dead 2 is amazing. Actually, right on par with Red Dead 2.
I was about
But
to say that's a
but this is right on par with Red Dead 2. I'm sorry. Like,
I love Deborah Ann Wool as Kratos' wife. Right. Faye. So many F words, but I didn't know it was her until then. And I was like, wait a minute.
wait,
the
what
fuck?
is Deborah?
She's she does a D&D show.
Oh, okay.
Geek and Sundry, I think she's part of, but she's also I can't remember her name in Daredevil. She's the
Okay.
she's the
I don't.
the love interest of him, but it was great. Shit, why did I forget his name? Thor, incredible.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. I think I'm forgetting everybody's names. Wow. Christopher Judge more than outdid himself in the first game. Absolutely. With his presentation of particular lines and his now willingness as Kratos to open up as a character is stunning. And I love, even though it's fan servicey, I love that they have him talk about his time in Greece, like at certain things. I love that they keep pounding into his experiences with his brother. Yeah, which is really interesting because that was a PSP game. Like, how many people played that game? You know what I mean? Like, not that it doesn't deserve to be talked about, but still, it's great. And they do. I haven't got to the line yet, but I know they talk about his daughter a little bit. They talked about it in the main story, but they do talk about it again. And of course, Mimir asks him about the Battle of 300, and other things. And it was very cool to see just Kratos be a person rather than a embodiment of anger.
There are moments where he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's one moment
willingly vulnerable.
There's one moment in the game that I think that was incredibly powerful. And Kratos, it's a scene where they go back mid-game. They go back to Sindri's house in between quests. And Kratos is going to sleep. And he takes off all his armor. And he's just sitting there topless. And he sits down. And for the first time, I don't know if you've ever seen like an older bodybuilder, just like old man. You know what old man skin looks like?
Yeah.
You sit down and the light hits him and you can see his age.
Yeah.
And man, and Kratos is just thinking. And it's one of those scenes where you can almost see or picture in your mind telepathically exactly what that person is thinking. The scene that I compare it to is the one in Witcher 3 where it's Priscilla's song and she's singing about.
Oh yeah.
And it turns to Geralt and Geralt just sort of is looking at the ground and his eyes go back up. really contemplative, and also I think somewhat foreboding, because there are a couple hints that Kratos is getting old in this. You know,
Absolutely.
what does that lead to? I don't know. I think Freya's Diana Bushati. I completely butchered her name. I apologize, but
That's all right.
I thought her performance was amazing, because a lot of her material is exposition, especially in the first game. In this one, it's like Venom Snake. This is Venom Freya in this one, and she has this, like, she's a goddess and she's a queen. So, when she's talking about things, she's very high, and this is Vanaheim. She kind of, like, she's a Shakespearean actress. And then there's those moments where Odin, and it's like,
That
and it
motherfucker.
drops.
Yeah.
She goes from this I don't know, what's that character in Lord of the Rings, the one that you will have a queen.
Oh, Galadriel.
Like this Galadriel, and then it drops straight down to fucking, like, I'm gonna kill that son of a bitch. And that range, and that kind of character is just, oh my god, it's just so good.
When you mention stuff like that, I think I kind of get a little bit of a real life inspiration from like Princess Diana, particularly, because you do have moments of Freya talking to regular people and spirits. She's very much like, believe me, I didn't want any of this. I didn't want you to I didn't want you to suffer. I didn't want anybody to suffer. Like, just she's a regular person when she needs to be to the people that think she's above them. But when she needs to be, the goddess queen, even the Valkyries, when the Valkyries talk to her, she's just like, no, we're sisters. Like, we're in this together. And when you even come back, I love her dynamic with Mimir, because you can tell she still hates him. She still hates the shit out of him.
There's a part of her that still really dislikes him, and he feels bad. He does.
Right. But she loves to attack him with very snide remarks, and you could tell she has a smile when she's doing it, but they're like friends. It's that very, very...
They warm up to one another.
Yeah.
I think forgiveness is something in the game as well. Yeah, man. Sunny Sujic.
As Atreus. Yeah.
As Atreus. Goddamn.
Yeah.
There are moments. I think my favorite line in the game was uttered by Faye when she said, "To grieve deeply was to love deeply," and I was like, "Damn, that came from God of War." There were a couple times where I recorded 15-second clips because some character, Kratos said, "My strength has nothing to do with my body," about the will to fight, that kind of thing.
Death will have me when it earns me.
But man, yep. And I'm really excited for you to go through some of those side quests.
Oh yeah.
Because some of those side quests have phenomenal moments, and some of the ending is just really not subdued. What's the word I'm looking for? It's really just blunt.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're not happy. You're not sad. It's just, this is the way things turned out.
Things don't always have to be bombastic.
And you got to rebuild. Some people lost people. Other people didn't. And you just kind of have to move on and be positive about it or whatever. And man, I'm really excited to see what they do, because there is no obvious path. And that opens up all kinds of possibilities for where they could take it, except for Atreus. Obviously, I think we kind of know what Atreus is going to be doing. What Kratos is going to be doing, who knows where that goes.
Yeah.
Think we're good there?
Yeah, game of the year for me.
My favorite one too.
Yep.
Is there anything else? Anything you want to say about any other games, Connor? We didn't.
I want to do a quick. I didn't gush about it, but in the music section, I talked about it a couple weeks ago. But the Sumeru portion, the soundtrack for Genshin Impact, is very, very good. If you ever get a chance to go check that out, loads of mandolins and some of the Arabic instruments that are in there are just compiled so wonderfully.
Okay, are we all good?
I believe so.
Huh? Yeah.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. I apologize for not plugging in the camera. That's my fault. I will.
You're fired.
We'll just fill it with more gameplay.
Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can check us out. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
There's no camera. I was waving. Bye.